The Mask. Well, it's actually not this one. It's this one. Wait, you're telling me it's not this one either? You're telling me there's another Mask? Oh no. One of my favorite movies as a kid, and still to this day, is The Mask. It had Jim Carrey, it had a bunch of wacky characters, and if you didn't know, it was actually Cameron Diaz's first movie that she was in. And then released 10 years after the original, we have Son of the Mask. But there's one key thing that's missing out of this movie. Where the heck is Jim Carrey? Oh yeah, that's right. Instead of having Jim Carrey in this movie, we have Jamie Kennedy. And it's funny too, because I remember really liking this movie as a kid, but that was when my mind was fresh, squishy, and really malleable. And now my brain's corrupted by the internet.
Drink the beer! Right here.
But instead of just going off of my memories that I had of this movie as a kid, let's take a little look at the reviews and see what the public, see what everybody else had to say about it. So the movie doesn't have rave reviews. Kind of a shocker. But one thing about this is, I just wanted to see if the director had a bad day. You know, we'll have those. Sometimes you knock out a bad movie, but it doesn't mean all the movies that you make are bad, right? And there was one movie that stuck out more than anything. Cats and Dogs. This is a movie I never saw as a kid, and honestly, I'm kind of happy now seeing some of the trailers of it. They also advertise on the poster and the box of the DVD that this is from the director of Cats and Dogs. Like, this is some kind of selling point to the movie. Like, it's gonna get people in, you know, oh, this is from the director of Cats and Dogs. Oh, I gotta see this one. And with a budget of only $84 million and raking in a whopping $60 million in the box office, I can assure you that this movie is a banger. Banger? I hardly know her. But that's enough dilly-dallying. Let's check out Son of the Mask. So the movie starts out with a museum tour by the teacher from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And the entire time that he's giving the tour, he's just dogging on Loki for no reason.
Rowdy little brother.
So when Loki finds out that the mask was fake, he kind of snaps. Yeah, he just kind of rips off the face of the guide and throws it in the case. Okay. But honestly, I don't even blame him after all the insults that he was throwing at him for no reason. And then he proceeds to pull out actual finger guns and then shoots the police literally into the ground. And this whole first sequence kind of builds a foundation of the movie. Like, if you've seen the first Mask, you know that it can be goofy, it can be wacky, but it's grounded in some kind of reality. Well, this movie, on the other hand, just puts its foot on the gas, and it does not take its foot off the entire time. And everything that I just showed you happens within the first 5 minutes of the movie. And then we get to see the real Mask, which we find out was scooped up by a dog, just like in the original movie, which I think is kind of cool at least. And that's the last time you're gonna hear me say that, because if you didn't already think this movie was bad, buckle up. And then we get introduced to what I like to call one of the worst protagonists I've ever seen in a movie, Tim Avery, who I guess was supposed to be played by Jack Black, but he actually turned down the role, and I think that's for the better because I don't think Jack Black could have even saved this movie. And we find out that Tim doesn't really want to have kids yet. And no wonder, all the kids that he's surrounded by are just complete menaces, and one just slams into his nuts right away. Tim also has this weird, like, lucid daydream where his wife is giving birth to like hundreds and hundreds of demon babies. On the way home from that, Tim's wife Tanya is trying to have a serious conversation with him about having kids, and he is having nothing to do with it. He's also playing Mario Kart in one of the weirdest ways possible that I have ever seen. He just barely pays attention the entire time. But now, we cut to Loki and Odin. One of the main plot points of this movie is that Loki has been tasked by Odin to hunt for his mask on Earth, or Midgard, if you're a Norse god. And for one of the stupidest reasons in the world, Odin refuses to use his all-seeing eye.
Why don't you just use that all-seeing eye of yours and tell me where it is?
To figure out where the mask is. Tell that to Loki, and then tell him where to get it. He just says, "No, this is your problem. You solve it." If they would have done that from the start, they could have saved us from this monstrosity of a movie. So one of the other main plot points of this movie is Tim is trying to get his own cartoon, but he keeps on getting cucked by the animation studio that he works for. That's not the only thing that's cucking him. More on that later. And you probably thought in your mind, Tim's probably an animator, he probably at least does something for the company. No. He's a turtle. So I'm no expert, but you might need a couple more animators. There's probably more animators that worked on this movie than they had shown in this entire scene that's supposed to be an animation studio. We also found out that there's an office Halloween party that everybody is super excited about. Hey Tim, why don't you just go as a turtle? It's probably better than whatever you got.
Maybe you could go as a turtle.
Hey, I just said that. Is this dude reading my script or something? And then we get to see Tim getting ready for his costume party. But he doesn't really like his costume. But it doesn't matter. He doesn't need that mask anyways. Because remember, his dog brought home one earlier.
This is the crappiest piece of crap in Craptown.
Whoa, slow your roll there, Tim. You kind of got a potty mouth. And now we're finally at the party with the mask. And this is where the movie gets fun, is what I would say if the movie was fun and not cringe. So when he puts on the mask in his car starts bouncing around and starts shooting out lights everywhere. And everybody that's walking around is just like, oh, okay. Like, this is just some normal thing that happens every day. This is also something that kind of just happens throughout the entire movie. Like, the characters will be doing the most outrageous, crazy things. And then the civilians are like, cool. Whatever. Like walking around like it's a Sunday afternoon. But we're finally at the party. It's time for the grand entrance. So if you've seen the original movie, you know there's this whole sequence with Jim Carrey and he's trying to escape all these police officers. So instead of fighting them or fending them off or something, they just do a big dance number. And that's how he diffuses the entire situation. And in this movie, they tried getting that exact same energy that they had from the original, but it just does not work out at all. And it just falls on its face and it's just kind of cringe.
This is the part where you boogie.
And I want to know why every movie in this era thought it was a requirement to have some kind of rap scene, even if it made absolutely no sense for what was going on in the movie. But now the party's over and it's time to come back home. He does the classic, "Honey, I'm home." And then the masked Tim, do you know how I mentioned getting cucked earlier? This is the scene I was talking about. Did he technically cuck himself? Because it wasn't really him, it was the mask. And the mask is Loki. Is this Loki's kid technically? I guess that would kind of make sense. But honestly, did he just get cucked by the mask? Let me know in the comments down below. And now because of Tim's crazy night, he's kind of the talk of the office. And because of Tim and Tanya's recent crazy night, she takes a pregnancy test and she finds out she's pregnant. They also go to the doctor to make sure, but instead of the doctor having some kind of like formal report or some kind of printout that he has, the doctor just holds up a normal pregnancy test. Like, I'm pretty sure if you were in this office, you would not be showing them a take-home kit. Like, does Tim not know how to read?
Pregnant.
Now cue the pregnancy sequence. That just sounded so weird. That's how I had it written in my script, but honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to call this thing, so pregnancy sequence, I guess. And then Tanya just starts doing some weird things. Like for some late night craving, she puts silly string on like a cracker or something. And then they also kind of make a reference to the Cuban Pete scene from the original movie, but it just doesn't work. And now their kid is finally born. And what name did they go with? Alvy. His name is Alvy Avery. What? And as little as Odin cares about the mask and what happens to it, he knows immediately when Alvy's born. If he can use his ravens for this, why didn't he just use them to find out where the mask was in the beginning of the movie? And then he also tells Loki if he doesn't find the baby and the mask now, then he's gonna be in big trouble. And now that the baby's born, we get to finally see the powers. And, you know, we've already seen Tim's, we've already seen Loki's, so my expectations are pretty high. Also, a little while later, Tim just puts his kid in front of like Looney Tunes and a bunch of old cartoons, and Alvy starts absorbing everything from that.
Hello, my baby.
And that pretty much becomes his like repertoire of like tricks and gags and whatever else that he'll do for the rest of the movie. But while those things are really great in classic cartoons, and the way that they represent him in the movie is just kind of shit, honestly. If I told you the next scene was Loki flying around as a green bee trying to figure out every baby that was born in the last couple days, would you believe me? Honestly, probably, at the rate that this movie is going.
Oh, what a jerk.
Loki then stings a receptionist, takes her place, and then looks up all the baby records on her computer. And then we get this whole montage of Tim trying to take care of the baby. I have never seen anybody this bad. Tim actually acts like a 5-year-old throughout this entire movie. He almost stabs his kid with a nightlight. And even his kid that's cracked out of his mind knows like, oh my God, no, please don't do it. Don't do it. Like, how bad of a parent do you actually have to be? And we find out that Tanya's gonna go on a business trip. And you know what that means?
It's boys week. It's boys week.
And I don't know why they didn't use Tim's scream for this next scene. Like, they recorded it in previous spots of the movie, but in this spot, they just decided not to, and then just used the most basic scream. Newsflash, Tim didn't really want the kid all that much. We also get this weird scene inserted in there where Tim is just trying to make Alvy say dad in any way possible. And it ends with this.
Dada?
Mother.
And then we see Loki going door to door in all these like random disguises, looking at all these babies, trying to figure out which one's Alvy. It was kind of creepy. And the first time we see him do this, he disguises himself as a vacuum salesman, vacuums up the mom, and then he goes to the baby and starts shaking the baby around to see if it was born with the mask. Is he looking for a barcode or something? Why does he keep on looking around on the baby and like holding it upside down like he's gonna find something if he does that? And something that you're probably thinking is, where's the mask? So the dog actually took it and he buried it in his doghouse. And he's gonna use the mask in order to kill the baby. Literally, in order to kill Alvy, just so then Tim and Tanya spend more time with him. I feel like there's way easier ways of doing that rather than killing a literal child. I forgot to mention too, within all of this, Alvy is also trying to put Tim in a psych ward. And honestly, I'm on Alvy's side here to try to get Tim not in control of him, because Tim is not a good dad. He does not know how to take care of a baby, literally at all. He tried to kill him multiple times already. Like, we have seen how many times he's put him in danger. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. I just do not like Jamie Kennedy as an actor. I'm sorry if you like Jamie Kennedy, but he just doesn't do it for me. And then Tim's watching Alvy for like 2 seconds. He starts doing like all of his like cartoons and starts imitating everything. And he's like, oh my God, I gotta show my neighbor. And in the scene, we get like a culmination of everything that I was talking about. Tim is going insane. And then Otis and Alvy are like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyoteing each other, like trying to one up each other. So do you guys remember when peeing and puking was just the funniest thing you've ever seen in a movie? Yeah, neither do I. And this movie is both. First, we just get this weird pee scene with Alvy. Like, he starts peeing out of 1, and then it starts splitting into 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and then all of a sudden it stops, and then all of a sudden there's just this big-ass piss cannon. I have no idea what else to call it other than, like, a piss cannon. And then we get this weird scene of like a mix of The Exorcist and then Alvy puking like green slime from Doubleday or something. And somehow not a single drop of it gets on Tim at all. So in this like mini chase scene, Loki pulls up to the side and immediately alerts the police. And then the police start chasing him. Once they get up to him, Loki just grabs his head, slams it into the ground. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, all the civilians are just like, oh my God, are you okay? And they're like trying to pull him out, not even acknowledging the fact that this is the most random weird thing to happen. And then when Loki finally catches up to Tim, he pulls out this big axe, and then his axe pulls out a gun. And they're just like, okay, we got an axe that pulls out a gun. We need something else. Okay, what if the gun pulls out a refrigerator, and then the refrigerator pulls out a Bowie knife, and then that pulls out a tuna. And then at the very end, the tuna opens his mouth and say, well, you can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. And then he proceeds to launch a comically large grenade at them. And then like Frieza's supernova attack or something. And then Odin intervenes. He takes over Tim's body. And then Loki tries explaining the entire situation that's happening. And then Odin's like, no, you're wrong. You don't have powers anymore. And then just takes all of Loki's powers out of nowhere. And then this scene ends with Alvy grabbing like 2 dumpsters and then taking them and like smashing them a bunch of times against Loki. Like, wouldn't Loki be dead from that? Like, he's not a god anymore. He should be like squashed like a bug. I don't know if you would believe me, but in the very next scene of the movie, Loki gets his powers back. Like, in this movie, there's a problem in the previous scene. And then in the very next scene of the movie, they're just like, problem solved. We figured it out. Woo! Like, there is no stakes at all in this movie. But I should also mention that Loki only gets his powers back for an hour. He's kind of on a time crunch here, so he's really got to pull in some extra work. And then amidst all the chaos, the neighbor comes to see what's going on with Tim and what all the noise is. And then Loki just turns her into a nose. And I did think the special effect was kind of cool for a second. And then she sneezed. And then it ruined the entire thing for me. And then after Tim finally wakes up from all this noise, he runs across the house, he runs into Alvy's room, and then we get to see probably one of the worst CGI moments in this entire movie.
Guess who?
But now Tanya's home, so there's finally somebody there that knows how to take care of a baby.
Is that really you?
No, you idiot.
Just kidding. It was Loki again. And then Loki kind of gives them an ultimatum. Like, he wants the mask right then and there. So they work on a meeting spot to go to. And the meeting spot they keep on talking about is Red Lobster. Like, imagine if just some normal dude and a literal Norse god just show up to make a trade for an ancient mask for a baby. And then Tim starts panicking because he's a baby and he can't rationalize any situation. And then his wife actually comes home. Tim immediately attacks his wife, even though they just agreed to meet at Red Lobster. And then after like 5 seconds of Tim explaining like the whole situation, like, okay, our baby just got kidnapped by the Norse god Loki. He blasts off in a stick of dynamite and we need to bring that green mask that I wore to the Halloween party to him so we can get our baby back. Sound good? And she's just like, sounds good. Like, I'm just so confused about the rationale in this movie. But before they can go get Alvy back, they have to get the mask, which is being used by the dog so then he can go date the neighbor dog. Like, it gives him confidence or like it makes him some kind of hunk or something. And then after Tim starts explaining the situation, the dog just kind of forgives him and he's like, okay, that's fine. I like the baby now. And like forgets everything that's been happening for the entire movie, like how the dog and Alvy have been fighting this entire time. And before he gives the mask back, there's just this weird, slobbery CGI dog kiss. And then we jump to Alvy and Loki just hanging out in this alley. I know they talked about meeting at Red Lobster. They decided on an alley instead. And after hanging out with each other, they kind of get in this cowboy shootout. They decide to play Super Twister. Loki, that is an actual child. Why are you going to play Twister with an actual baby? Yeah, this entire scene is just creepy to me. Like, I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to include this in the movie. And then Tim and Tanya arrive a little bit after, and they all start chit-chatting about the mask and giving it back to Loki. They go over to Loki and they're like, okay, let's make the trade. They stupidly give Loki the mask first, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to keep the mask and I'm going to keep your baby because your baby is kind of cool and we have a lot in common. And then Otis comes out of nowhere, which I didn't even think he came with them. And then he jumps through the air, bites Loki in the nuts, and then the mask goes... starts flying through the air, and then it perfectly lands on Tim's face. Of course it does.
Get it off my son!
I don't think anything can prepare you for the nasty neon green, plastic-haired, weird Jamie Kennedy, even though I knew it was coming. And then Loki sees this happening, and he's like, oh shit. I gotta go. So Tim does the only logical thing here. He turns his car into what I can only describe as the cringe mobile. Please tell me why. Why did they design the car like this? Why does this rejected Hot Wheels have so many teeth? And then there's this chase scene where the roads start going like up and down. And once again, Tanya and Otis now are just like they're just on for the ride and just going along with whatever ridiculous situation is happening. And then Tim gets to this arena where Loki decided to fight. They have this weird like cliche boxing match type thing, but then they end it with Tim jumping into the air and just ripping ass in Loki's face. Like, why didn't I think of this earlier? We had a pee joke. We had a puke joke. The only thing we needed was a fart joke. Am I right? And then their funky CGI fight kind of escalates into Loki turning into a pencil and then like doodle bobbing his way around the entire fight. And then Tim turns into a pencil sharpener. He sharpens Loki and then Loki reforms with all the pencil sharpenings back into his normal form. And now after all the fighting, Alvy is up with an ultimatum. Will he pick Loki and live out this weird, disgusting CGI nightmare or pick his parents? Spoiler alert. He picks his parents, of course, but not until after Tim just delivers this terrible speech. Like, instead of anything he said, he should have just apologized for acting like a literal child this entire movie. And then they make the scene even worse by ending it with this. And Loki gets kind of butthurt about the outcome of the situation. Understandably, he just met somebody that's kind of like his new best friend. So he goes green again, pulls out this big ass hammer, and then tries smashing Tim and his entire family with it. And what do you think happens? Alvy saves them, showing that they're finally a loving family and they're reunited. No. Tim just stops it for some reason, and he has super strength now. Tim does not have the mask on. He does not have anything that should be giving him powers, but he's stopping this gigantic hammer that's literally being swung by a god, and he's just a normal dude. Like, if Tim already had super strength and all these powers, why is he using the mask? Once again, I'm just so confused about the logic of this movie. And then once again, when Tim is about to be killed by Loki and these random drills come out of the side of the hammer and are about to poke into him, he loses his powers. Remember when I said that there was only an hour? Well, it just so happens that that hour runs out exactly when he's trying to kill Tim. And then Odin shows up. Also, fun fact, the guy that played Odin in this movie also played Mario in the Super Mario Brothers movie in the 90s.
It's a me. A Mario.
I kind of feel bad though, since this guy keeps on getting a bunch of like really terrible movies, even though he was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I think that's a fantastic movie. So at least he has that one. And that's basically it. They give the mask back to Odin and Loki, they go on their way, and then Tim finally has his dream come true and he gets his own cartoon made. But I have one question for Lawrence Guterman. Was the foot shot necessary? Why is this the final shot of the movie? Just a sweeping shot of both, like, of everybody's toes. Like, what? Was this scene like co-directed by Dan Schneider and Quentin Tarantino or something? Like, should I end all my videos with a big foot shot now? Maybe that's how I'll end this one. No, that's not how I'm gonna end this video, you weirdo. But that just about does it for Son of the Mask. Would I watch it again? No, not a chance in the world. I didn't even mention the fact that I needed to like split this movie into 2 sittings because it was just way too much information and I just needed to give my brain a rest. Also, let me know in the comments down below if you liked the video or if you like this style, because it's a little bit different than what I normally do, but I always like experimenting with different video styles. Also, let me know if you have a terrible movie, TV show, or really anything else that you want to see me do a video on, because I'd love to hear it. Also, if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching it. I really appreciate it. But if you'll excuse me, I have a date with a Norse god at my local Red Lobster.